Some films were harmed in the making of this podcast. Hello and welcome to For Your Consideration,
the podcast featuring roundtable discussion reevaluating the cinematic canon of past masterpieces and modern classics.
I'm your host, Mike Josick.
And I'm your host, Dustin Friesman.
Thanks for joining us.
Willkommen.
So, you guys might have noticed already that the audio quality is a little bit different this episode than it normally is. And why is that, Dustin?
Because I am relaxing on the sunny beaches of Fort McMurray in a work camp, getting fat on free food.
Are there beaches in Fort Mac?
There's a river running through Fort Mac, I think.
A river runs through it.
Except I'm in the middle of nowhere, so...
As a result of the demands of Dustin's work, he is no longer, well, at least for a little while, no longer able to record in the palatial.
He's no longer with us.
You're communicating with us from beyond.
Ooh.
Got a seance going here. There's 6 of us holding hands around a table.
They will remain silent as well they should.
Yeah, so the palatial For Your Consideration Studios is kind of not going to be used for... How long are we going to be doing this for?
I have no clue, but I should possibly be back this upcoming weekend.
Alright, so basically this might just be off and on.
No, it should just this job will be over within a week or two.
Alright.
I could be back this weekend and possibly not even come back. I might get a whole one-night reprieve before I go back to work out of town somewhere else again.
Well, I take pride in the quality of our audio presentation, so I just thought we should probably throw that out a little.
Already with the excuses he is.
Little explanation for the difference. So yeah, this week we had a poll. We had a Twitter poll, which we announced on our last episode, and the 2 movies up for voting were Princess Mononoke and My Own Private Idaho. And with a rousing 75%, Princess Mononoke won.
Like I said, from day one, may the best anime win.
And actually, I'm kind of surprised that there have been very few... We've had like 3 of these now, and I think all of them have been very clear wins. There hasn't been any like really close...
Although we have been sitting around reserving our votes just in case we have to affect the tie.
This is true. But the winner for this week is Princess Mononoke.
AKA the only movie you'll see this year featuring a princess who drinks blood.
I would love to see a Disney film where one of the princesses is drinking blood.
I mean, you might see it in like Queen of the Damned, but this isn't a vampire movie.
And the actual princess designation is something that we'll probably talk about. It's more of a translation than it is position of royalty.
Well, Mononoke is essentially sort of like monster or demon to an extent. It's something that was just given to her by the villagers. It's like the monster princess.
Yeah, exactly.
Her name is San.
Exactly. So let's roll the credits on this film, and then we will get to chatting about it. So Princess Mononoke...
Or Mononoke Hime, for those of you who are Japanese, I guess.
was directed by Hayao Miyazaki. It was produced by Toshio Suzuki. Written by Hayao Miyazaki. It starred Yoji Matsuda, Yuriko Ishida, Yuko Tanaka, Kaoru Kobayashi, Masahiko Nishimura, Tsunehiko Kamijo, Akihiro Miwa, Mitsuko Mori, Hisaya Morishige. Music was by Joe Hisaishi. Cinematography was by Atsushi Okui. It was edited by Takeshi Siyama. It was produced by Studio Ghibli and distributed by Toho Films. It was released on the 12th of July, 1997. And it is a film that has won many accolades. It won basically the Best Picture in Japan the year that it came out. But obviously, being a Japanese film, it doesn't exist on like the AFI or BFI list. However, Dustin?
It ranks 377 on the critics poll at the Sight and Sound.
Which is ultimately what qualifies it for discussion here today.
until we find a better qualifier.
So, Dustin, I'm not sure if this is your first or one of many times watching this film. What did you think of Princess Mononoke?
This is actually my third time watching the film, and I always remember enjoying it. I've never really felt extreme emotion towards the film, but I've never disliked the film. And watching it again this time, I'm seeing that there's a whole lot of stuff sort of going on thematically all over the show.
Yeah, this movie's very heavy with the themes.
Oh, 100%. They're all over the place. And looking it up afterwards, they're talking about themes that I didn't even see. But it features one of my favorite things in movies, and that's sort of a gray morality. There's no clear good and bad guys, except for the main character, Ashtika. And he is just, if I have a complaint about this film, it's that he is too good. No matter how angry he gets, no matter how frustrated he gets, he is the most Zen Buddhist person you will ever meet in your life.
I think the film needs that figure in the middle, though. And I mean, he starts off where he's essentially going to see the deer god to cure his curse, which he got by killing I think it's Nago, the boar god.
And he didn't want to. He tried to plead with him.
Yeah, he totally did it to save the village. And so he goes to see the deer god because apparently the blood of the deer god can cure ailments. He goes on his quest. He's no longer kind of a part of his village. He's exiled from his village. In the course of his journey, he runs into these different people who are on different sides of this argument, for lack of a better word. I think he sees both sides, and I think that's why he is the character that he is.
Funny enough, I don't think he necessarily sees both sides. He just wants nothing but peace. The village that he is effectively the prince of, it lives in harmony with nature, so if anything, he'd be on the side of nature, but they value life so heavily.
But I think he respects Lady Eboshi. He sees what she's doing for the lepers, for the brothel girls. She is providing for a marginalized people, and she does care for her people, but there's kind of a...
That doesn't mean that he cares for the method by which he does it, which is destroying the forest.
Exactly. He disagrees. He doesn't believe that the end justifies the means, but I think he sees her as somebody who's not a bad person, but who just...
Although, funny enough, she is spending every ounce of her energy effectively using those marginalized people. Yes, they have a home, but they're all working for her as she is her own cult of personality.
That was definitely something that I was feeling while watching it too. You know, as much as her, the brothel girls loved no longer being in the village, essentially being prostitutes, they were indentured slaves.
They were saying, oh yeah, life is tough here. I mean, we work 4 straight days in a row, but it's still better than at the village. And they just love the crap out of Lady Eboshi. They're willing to kill and die for her. No questions asked.
But there is... I think this movie... I think the main theme of this movie is that give and take, that balance of what is good and what is evil, and that we all have good and we all have bad within us, and it's all about finding that equilibrium. And I think that's essentially, why we have nature on the one side, Eboshi on the other side.
Nature versus progress is how I put it, because even Eboshi is working for a shogunate who is going up against yet another one that is attacking her at all times. She's just an arms dealer, effectively.
I think ultimately, if there is a villain to this movie, it's probably Lord Asano, because he's the one who essentially wants the deer god's head because he believes it will grant him immortality. I think Lady Eboshi may have been more easily swayed if she didn't feel that was kind of her duty and that she wasn't trying to sort of impress.
I don't know that she cared if it was her duty. At one point she mentions that she was sort of going along with things just to see if that's where it would end, sort of as a test of the leader, so that the whole killing the deer god thing was almost irrelevant to her. They didn't have real respect for nature. It was just about what they could get them.
But she chooses to not go back to help with the ironworks. She says, oh, I've taught them well, they can defend it. So her people are dying while she goes off and she's all like, watch, this is how you kill a god. Like, there's definitely
some not good in there.
Yeah.
There's definitely some greed. Greed is a big factor in this. Because a lot of you, even at the very beginning, you have the monk protecting Ashtika from the people who were going to steal the gold from him. And he sort of he gets the information out of him because he's more of an information broker and a spy than anything else. And he seeks to use that later on for his own gain, which is political gain with Lord Asano.
One of the things that I actually was kind of wondering about, I mean, I mentioned before that I felt, one of the big ideas in the movie is that whole give and take. I feel that we can definitely see the give and take on the human side, but I think the nature side...
The nature side, I do see some give and take. The thing is, it's not from any of the animals. The animals, all they see is the destruction of their forest. And yeah, that is a huge encroachment, so they're defending themselves to the death. But where you see the give and take is the dear God himself, who will kill his own servants, who does effectively sacrifice his own life in order to regrow the forest. Life and death are necessary parts, and that's what I feel he represents.
I agree with that, but there's also, nature is essentially reacting to what the humans are doing. I feel that nature is a more sort of passive... I mean, this movie has a very strong environmental theme to it, so I kind of feel like nature is portrayed as sort of wild. I mean, unless you look at Mononoke herself, unless you look at San herself, where she is so consumed with hate that she's willing to just keep fighting, and the boars are willing to just fight, and it's all about killing the humans, and they can't see any other way out of it.
They can't see the forest for the trees.
Ha!
Well, that's because all the trees were cut down, to be fair.
I think that's probably, if I had to go for any bad part of nature that's portrayed in the film, that having the blinders on and just being very reactionary and not trying to find a middle ground, a way to coexist with the people. But I mean...
At the same time, that's how nature works in reality. We tend to have the upper hand when it comes to destroying nature, whereas nature just gets trampled on by us. It doesn't have the ability to really act and counter us. It never has.
Agreed. And there's also, I know some people out there don't believe in climate change, but if you fuck with nature, if you kill nature, ultimately, if you kill that thing you live on, you die too.
Love the earth, but that's where I keep all my stuff.
And this is just kind of, I think, a representation of that, where, the clear cutting and the pollution, and if you're just going to keep pushing nature, nature's going to push back.
And the humans do definitely have sort of the same mentality that you'll see nowadays, where they're specifically going out to kill a deer god. They know what they're doing. They know there's this intelligent life that's in charge of this forest, and they're just saying, screw that, there's iron. For us, it's screw that, there's oil. Screw that, there's money. Money to be made, power to be gained, influence to be had. That's basically the big thing when it comes to all that. Business, got to create those jobs.
There is a line that Lady Eboshi, she comments that the forest is basically, I'm paraphrasing here, but she basically says that the forest is worth a fortune. And I think she's talking to Ashitaki at the time. So she basically does just view everything that she sees as a potential income stream.
Which is her great failing, if anything. Because, of course, she also cares for all these other people. And that's one of the big things they have, that there is no obvious villain. There's no obvious good guy besides, of course, Ashitaka. And one thing that he always says, the message he's always trying to get across, is that if you're alive, there's still hope. There's still chance. There's still potential. He says that several times, but you're still alive.
He kind of hammers that home at the end, too.
That's how it finishes.
And actually, it's interesting. I never thought of this while I was watching it, but he tells them to go into the water because the water would slow down whatever you want to call the entity that the deer god sort of became.
The Nightwalker?
Well, not the Nightwalker, but like the goo, the oozing goo that was just pouring over everything, which I suppose is sort of a manifestation of the Nightwalker once the head is gone. But essentially, he tells them to go into the water because it will slow down their doom, essentially. And if you think about it, nature is kind of what saved their lives because they're in the water's natural. The ironworks, it's pretty much in bad shape and it gets wiped out.
Once the forge is on fire, it's over.
Yeah, and so I think that's that's interesting. Like I said, I didn't think of that when I was watching the movie, but looking back on it now, I kind of like that. I kind of like the fact that, in a way, there is sort of the humans are the ones responsible for giving back the deer god's head, and nature is what essentially saved the group of humans. So that's showing kind of equilibrium. I don't know if I'm reaching there.
And certainly, even the deer god's death bred renewal. And I think that is a major theme right there. The deer god, who says practically nothing the entire time, embodies just this idea of death and renewal, and how everything will return to nature eventually, without even outright saying it.
And these people had to go through this near-apocalypse event and to see that renewal happen, and the deer god essentially giving his life for that renewal in order to see another path. And it was...
Even though Ashtika was just shouting at them the entire time, "Can't we all just get along?"
And Lady Eboshi commented that it took a wolf to kind of show her another way, which, honestly, I'm still a little confused by, because, Moro's head sort of animated and it bit off her arm, and I'm not sure. She said, "My life got saved by this wolf." Unless... The only thing I could think of was she meant that she got injured, so she got taken out of that situation and she was being protected by Ashitaki, because Ashitaki said he promised to bring her back alive. So, yeah, anyways...
But it was also Mononoke Hime who she could have been referring to.
It could have been.
No, wait. I'm entirely mistaken. We're both mistaken. We're both drunk. It was one of the remaining wolves that actually carried her back to safety. That's what happened. That's how it saved her life. It took a wolf to save her, even though the wolf's mother did bite off her arm, and that was their whole thing, try to kill her. It did save her life in the end. Just like the people saved that wolf from underneath the boar after the battle on the hill, where humans were sacrificing humans.
So we just both kind of blanked out this moment.
We both sort of crapped the bed on that one.
Fair enough.
Oopsie doodles. But speaking of things which I did notice this time around, at the beginning of the movie, Ashtika's bride-elect, Kaya, I believe, gives him a jewel dagger. And they both say to each other, like, "I'll always remember, you'll always be in my heart. Go save yourself," sort of deal. Throughout the movie, he doesn't use the jewel dagger, but at one point he decides arbitrarily to give it as a gift to Sun. And its twinkling sort of lets him see her through the demonic presence that ends up on the second boar god. So basically, he took this gift from his fiancée and gave it to another woman who he ends up with, and nobody mentions this or remembers Kaya at all.
I thought she was his sister, and I don't know if I'm confusing the American version with the Japanese version, even though I just watched the Japanese version, but I thought he even said...
They didn't specifically mention a relation to her, and I actually went back to watch it. And all they do is they talk about the remembering and keeping them in the heart. And it always seemed like a relationship thing to me. Where I'm getting bride-elect is from the wiki. Which I'm assuming
I see that on the wiki
sourcing
page.
Somebody.
I'm just going to very quickly launch this, and I'm going to mute it.
Perhaps, though, when he gave the jeweled dagger, it's because he recognized her voice, since it's both the same actress who does Kaya and San.
Yeah. In the subtitles here, she runs out and she says, "Brother," and he says, "Kaya," and he says, "You can't be here," and she's like, "I don't care."
Well, in that case, I missed the brother part, because I remember it referring to her as bride-elect. Because also I might have had a different set of subtitles.
That's very possible, yeah.
And especially when it comes to North American remakes, North American subbing and dubbing, they love to remove this kind of thing. And it was 97 that the movie came out, so that would be exactly the time where they would dull this for American audiences. They've gotten rid of same-sex relationships from Sailor Moon, turned them into cousins, and that is an awkward episode if you watch it dubbed. It's actually quite funny. Oh man, because there's big hearts in her eyes, and it's obvious that she's crushing on this person, but that's how they dubbed it. And they got rid of a lot of blood from animes. They Flanderized the entire, pretty much everything that came from Japan around that time. So I would not be surprised in the slightest bit if it was bride-elect, because if you look at just the traditional ways things were back in the day, a prince of a village would have had a bride-elect. in Japanese culture in the 1500s.
To be fair, though, I mean, he was never going back to his village. So even though it might be kind of perceived as a bit of a dick move to re-gift something that his fiancée had gifted to him, I mean, it was obviously there for narrative purposes, but yeah, it does... I mean, you're not wrong. It does kind of get dropped. I guess I'm just trying to come up with some sort of...
And hey, I agree.
As Marvel Comics would put it,
he's not going back.
To get a no prize, you have to come up with some sort of explanation, so... And for anybody who doesn't know, back in like the 80s and I think the 70s, there used to be no prizes where if you noticed a mistake in Marvel Comics and you wrote in and came up with a rational explanation for why that mistake was made, you got a no prize.
I would have made so much off of that. I would have gotten all the no prizes. I could BS the crap out of anything.
So, let's talk about just the
music?
The technical side of it. I want to talk a little bit just about the animation and also about the music. The animation, hand-drawn, beautifully done. There's some really great stuff in this movie. I mean, it looks great. I love the design. Miyazaki stuff, it's hard not to love the design. There was...
Even for an anime from the late 90s, it was quite good.
There was some early CGI in it as far as environments. There's a scene where Ashitaka's like running up a hill or along this kind of like ravine or ridge, and it's like a first person. You could so tell that it was CG, but it wasn't that it looked kind of oddly composited. It just didn't have the texture that sort of the rest of the environment had. But it was obviously used because it's really hard to hand draw certain angles and certain types of motion, and it's ultimately what CG was used early on in animation for things like that, for painted digital backgrounds and stuff like that. So it wasn't a detractor. It wasn't anything that really... It didn't make the movie bad or anything. It's something I noticed. I don't know. What are your feelings on the animation for this thing?
I didn't notice when it went to CG. I only read about it afterwards that they had some of it mixed in, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess. What I did notice, especially early on, it felt like there were a lot of stills going on, but once the movie started getting into full swing, I stopped noticing that, and I noticed a lot of fluidity and movement, and I especially noticed a lot of little behaviors from people and animals that gave it a good real feeling to me. Ashitaka having to restring his bow several times. I loved that little nod to attention. The way his red deer, whenever his deer Yoku would look around in specific ways, I felt that was very realistic. They must have done a bit of research on how animals move around their heads, and I enjoyed their attention to detail in movements and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, there was a nice balance of really stereotypical anime reactions and some action shots and stuff. There was stuff in there where I was like, yeah, I've seen that, a million times before. But then, like you said, there was a lot of just quiet, naturalistic stuff. There's a lot of attention paid to the animals. The humans were a little bit more cartoony, a little more expressive.
Oh, yeah. One thing they've always done in anime is they have the animals, when they speak, their mouths might move a little bit, but they're never trying to mouth it, which I appreciate.
That actually bothers me.
I've seen it done. That bothers you?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I get it, because it's like the animal's not talking. It's talking more probably in your head than it is actually talking. And, I mean, it would be terrible to dub, to animate, and... But, yeah,
It would be ridiculous to try to get animal sounds.
Yeah, it's not something I love. But again, it's not the worst thing in the world.
They've always had it's definitely a stylistic thing, a cultural thing. They'll always have it where the animals' voices will be a bit lower, they'll talk slower, and it's just the way it's done. And it's something that I prefer to seeing animals trying to talk, because they don't have lips, so you start adding in a whole lot of anthropomorphic features which feel less real to me.
I actually wish they would have just done it with, like, the eyes kind of thing. Like, they would just look at you, and you were sort of getting a telepathic... I mean, these are gods. These are essentially gods. So I feel that could have been pulled off. But they're going to do what they're going to do.
Moving on to the music, which this time I did notice. That's right. I thought the music was actually done extremely well. They had a lot of quiet scenes when they needed to have quiet scenes. It was never overbearing, but when it was there, it was very present and it suited the scene. I thought the soundtrack and the background music was fantastic.
Yeah, this movie does. I mean, it's a very highly regarded score. Hisaishi has done a number of Miyazaki's score previous to this. I think he did Nausicaa. I think he did Porco Rosso. I think he did Totoro. And yeah, it's a beautiful score. I think there were a couple of moments where it maybe got a little too sort of sentimental, stood out a little too much. But overall, as scores go, I think it's a winner.
You can tell from all the excitement in your voice, all the enthusiasm for it.
I think this movie, just for me, this movie was sort of the turning point for me with Studio Ghibli, where kind of anything before it, I'm pretty happy with. Anything after it, it's kind of touch and go, because by that point, there's kind of there's a Studio Ghibli style, and there's a Studio Ghibli story, and, you watch Howl's Moving Castle or Spirited Away. They're very much Miyazaki movies, and I feel like Princess Mononoke is very much a Miyazaki movie, and while that's not a bad thing, I think it just didn't grab me in any sort of, hey, this is new, hey, this is interesting kind of way.
And that's where I have a completely different perspective, because I actually haven't seen any other Studio Ghibli movies. Even to this day, I have a list of like 10 of them that a friend gave me, but I haven't gotten around to seeing them. So I don't have this other repertoire to look at and compare to and contrast to. So I have the more pure, isolated view of this movie, I guess.
And, I do. It's kind of a weird thing to say, because I actually like Howl's Moving Castle and Spirited Away much better than this film. I remember watching this movie back in, it was like 99 or 2000 when we got it. I kind of wanted to like it because Neil Gaiman was involved, and Gillian Anderson was involved, and Keith David and Billy Crudup and Claire. She played Moro.
Oh, well then.
Yeah.
All right.
And Minnie Driver, and I liked the cast. I liked the fact that Gaiman was doing the adaptation. At the time, I was a big Gaiman fan. It was exciting to be getting this big Japanese movie kind of brought over here, and I went into it hoping for the same kind of love that I had for Akira or Ghost in the Shell. I just didn't have it. I kind of thought, well, I'll revisit it. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention. And I've seen it, once again, and watching it again just now for the film or for the podcast, and it's just not clicking with me. But I think to say that it's like the pivot point, it's where I felt that Miyazaki now could officially sort of do wrong. It's like it's that first misstep where it just didn't live up to a certain standard, at least for me. And since then, there have been several films that I've loved and that I've not cared too much for, like The Secret Life of Arrietty. I thought it was kind of marginal. I haven't seen Ponyo, but I've heard it's very good. And like I said, I loved Howl's Moving Castle. I loved Spirited Away. I'm not sure where The Cat Returns and Whisper of the Heart fit in, but those are two movies that I also love. So yeah, it was kind of that first sobering moment where I realized that Studio Ghibli wasn't perfect.
Though at the same time, it's one of the films that started really popularizing anime in a foreign market, making it a bit more mainstream. Oh, for sure, yeah.
Like, I saw Totoro before I saw Mononoke, and I was all over Totoro. I loved it. I had friends who were like big into it, and they're the ones that got me into it. So going into Mononoke, I thought, hey, and there was kind of a following for Totoro, but it didn't have the exposure. And then I believe it was Miramax who distributed it in the States, and then Disney started pushing the Studio Ghibli stuff. And yeah, that started like this whole kind of waterfall. John Lasseter from Pixar is kind of the one that brought it over to Disney, and he was the one championing it. And that's when we started seeing, Kiki's Delivery Service and Porco Rosso and all these other Studio Ghibli movies that didn't get a release over here, all of a sudden getting a release. We got like the whole Studio Ghibli catalog. So, it certainly brought a lot of eyes onto the material, and that's great. It's significant for that. But, I feel like we've kind of been doing our summary for the last 5 minutes. Or at least I've been doing my summary for the last 5 minutes.
In that case, I should give my vote and do my own little summary.
So you do your summary and your vote, and then I'll give my vote, which I think everybody kind of knows where it's going, and then we'll wrap things up.
Well, unlike Mike, I'm actually leaning towards Masterpiece on this one, and The one qualifier that I will give that based on the conversation is that might be because I do have fresher eyes that have not seen other Studio Ghibli movies. I have less similar films to compare it to and contrast it to. So it could be that my mind might change after I see a whole lot more and be like, well, quality-wise, this is no longer in the top 5-10% of what I've seen of this genre, and that might boot it from the masterpiece category. But I think it has a lot of themes that it explores fairly well. It doesn't have much that I'd say is outright wrong with it, and I've enjoyed it every time I've seen it. Everybody I know who's seen it has enjoyed it. Even you enjoyed it, even if it's not magical and special. I think it's a movie that will last and rightfully earned its place in popularizing anime in foreign markets.
So you said you're leaning towards masterpiece. Are you...
Oh, no, yeah. I fell right into the masterpiece section.
Okay. Well, as I said, this isn't my favorite Studio Ghibli movie. I do have some problems with it. I think there's a lot of really good things in it. I like the themes that it's dealing with. I like the characters. I do feel it's maybe 15-20 minutes too long. I feel like some stuff could have been shaved out of this. I think that might be part of the reason why it just didn't hit home the way I'd like it to, because we were having a sort of pre-discussion before we started recording, and I was saying to Dustin, if I'm in a movie and I'm starting to think of other idle tasks that I could do while the movie is playing, if the movie is not engaging me in that way, then I think, something is maybe not masterpiece worthy of this movie. So for me, I definitely would slot this into museum piece. I think there's better Miyazaki out there, and I think a lot of the love and attention that this movie gets is the sort of fantasy setting, the great cosplay opportunities, and the fact that this is, I think for a lot of people, their first big anime experience, because there wasn't a lot between...
There was
when Ghost in the Shell came out.
There was Gundam, Ghost in the Shell, Akira, and this. All I remember is that 90% of anime that I can recall at the time was dull mech stuff that I just could not care about.
There was that generation that got the late 80s, early 90s, Otomo and Oshi movies, and then there was kind of nothing, and it was basically people falling in love with TV series and following that stuff, and then Princess Mononoke came out, and it's kind of a game changer. So that's my opinion. I'm going museum piece. Respect the film, but don't love the film.
I'm sure she'll make a lovely wife for you.
There's a demon inside of you. It's inside both of you. Look, everyone! This is what hatred looks like. This is what it does when it catches hold of you. It's eating me alive, and very soon now it will kill me. Fear and anger only make it grow faster.
I'm getting a little bored of this curse of yours, Ashitaka. Let me just cut the damn thing off!
So what do the rest of you in the audience happen to think? Hit us up on our Facebook, on our Twitter, on our Instagram, Libsyn, other stuff.
Yeah, this movie clearly... the people voted for this movie, so this movie clearly has some love out there.
That or the other one had more hate.
Maybe.
Or more of a, I don't even know what that is, reaction.
Could be. But yeah, we wanna know what you guys think of kind of the judgment here and how you feel about it. And if you get the show off of iTunes, be sure to rate and review the show while you're there as well. The comments that you make and the ratings that you give us help get the show into the eyes and ears of potential listeners, people who don't catch the show already, so that really helps us out. We also have the Patreon, patreon.com/FYC show. If you want to support the show, support the show's growth, help keep the lights on, hit us up there. Anything you can contribute is fantastic. We've got some reward levels that we think are pretty interesting, and hopefully you do too. And there's also the blog on WordPress. We've got the WordPress blog. And as far as next week, are we doing an All Things Considered for next week?
Next week will probably depend on where I happen to be, and that's the tricky one.
Okay, well, originally the plan was for an All Things Considered because we wanted to do an All Things Considered once a month. But depending on Dustin's situation, we may just fall back on another movie. So it'll be one or the other.
It'll be a great big mystery, so tune in next time to figure out the answer. Same bat time, same bat channel.
So thanks so much for joining us this week. Hope you enjoyed the show. We appreciate your support. And be sure to tune in next week when we'll be talking about another amazing classic film.
In theory.
Whatever that happens to be. In theory. So with that, I've been your host, Mike Josick.
And I've been Dustin Friesman.
Take care, and we'll see you next time on For Your Consideration.
Ta-ta. AKA that movie that shows that orphans from all countries can be princesses, apparently. That's not a good one at all.